The night began like any other. I was a sophomore in high school, and babysitting was my go-to gig for a little extra cash. The Johnsons had 3 kids, energetic twins and a toddler, but I was used to the chaos. They left me with a list of instructions, the usual bedtime routines, snack time, and a warning about the creaky floorboards that always made the twins giggle. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the house settled into an eerie silence. I put the kids to bed, reading them a story until their eyes fluttered shut. I settled into the living room, the glow of the TV illuminating the corners of the room, casting playful shadows that danced on the walls. It was peaceful until I heard a soft thud from the upstairs hallway. At first, I brushed it off as the house settling, but the sound repeated, followed by a low giggle that sent a chill racing down my spine. My heart raced as I glanced at the clock. It was well past the kids' bedtime. I tiptoed toward the staircase, each step creaking under my weight, the air thick with the smell of dust and unease. "Hello," I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. Silence answered me. I hesitated, but compelled by an unknown force, I ascended the stairs. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from the glowing nightlight in the twins' room. I peeked inside, half expecting to find them awake, but they were sound asleep, their innocent faces illuminated by the soft glow. But something felt off. I turned back toward the hallway when the giggle echoed again, this time closer. My breath hitched as I felt an icy breeze brush past me, sending goosebumps racing across my arms. I turned, and there she was, a shadowy figure of a little girl, her hair disheveled and her eyes wide with a haunting emptiness. She stood at the end of the hallway, staring right at me. "Come play with me," she said, her voice sweet yet dripping with malice. I stumbled back, my instincts screaming at me to flee. But curiosity was a cruel mistress. "Where are your parents?" I managed to stammer, my heart pounding in my chest. She giggled again, a sound that echoed through the empty hallway like a taunting whisper. "They don't want to play." Suddenly, the lights flickered and the temperature dropped, my breath visible in the air. Panic surged through me, and I turned to run, but the little girl was suddenly in front of me, blocking my path. Her smile twisted into something sinister, revealing rows of jagged teeth that glimmered in the faint light. "Stay with me forever," she hissed, her voice warping into something monstrous. I dashed for the twins' room, slamming the door behind me and locking it. My mind raced as I fumbled for my phone, dialing the Johnsons' number with shaking hands, praying they would pick up. But the line was dead, leaving me in a suffocating silence. I could hear the soft thumping of little feet just outside the door, and my heart sank. Desperately, I turned to the twins, shaking them awake. "Wake up. We need to get out of here," but their eyes were glazed, unseeing, as if they were trapped in a dream from which they couldn't wake. The door rattled, and the giggle returned, now mixed with a chorus of childish laughter. The sound was maddening, echoing off the walls, and the air thickened with dread. I felt the weight of something sinister bearing down on me, and I knew I had to escape before I became another lost soul in this nightmare. Summoning every ounce of strength, I hurled the window open and climbed out, leaving the laughter behind me. As I hit the ground, I glanced back at the house, my heart pounding. The little girl stood in the window, her dark eyes watching me, a smile stretching across her face. I never returned to babysit again, but sometimes, in the dead of night, I'd hear the faint echo of laughter, reminding me that some games are better left unplayed. I had never been a fan of babysitting, but when my neighbor asked me to watch her 2 kids for the night, I couldn't say no. They were sweet, well-behaved, and I could earn a few bucks for the effort. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep shades of purple and orange, I settled onto the couch with the kids, ready for a night of cartoons and popcorn. Once the clock struck 8, their mother kissed them goodnight and left, leaving me in the cozy but quiet house. As the kids drifted off, a sense of calm enveloped me. I flipped through channels, seeking something engaging, but every flicker of light felt more ominous as the shadows in the corners grew longer. That's when I heard a faint noise, like a whisper, coming from the hallway. "Just the wind," I murmured to myself, shaking off the unease creeping up my spine. After all, it was just an old house. The creaks and groans were nothing to worry about. But then it happened again. This time louder, more insistent. I glanced at the kids, both asleep, their faces peaceful. I stood, heart pounding in my chest, and tiptoed toward the hallway, drawn by the eerie sound. As I reached the end of the corridor, my breath caught in my throat. The bathroom door stood ajar, a sliver of darkness in the otherwise illuminated hallway. I pushed the door open, half expecting to find a prank waiting for me, but the bathroom was empty. I turned to leave when I caught a glimpse of something in the mirror, a fleeting shadow darting behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing, just the bathroom, still and silent. My mind raced with possibilities. Maybe it was the kids playing tricks? I turned back to the mirror, and that's when I saw a figure, pale and gaunt, peering at me from the corner of the room. My heart lurched as I stumbled back, crashing into the sink. "Get away from me," I shouted, my voice barely a whisper against the suffocating silence. I realized in horror that this wasn't just a trick of the light. The figure's eyes were hollow and dark, its mouth twisted into a ghastly grin. Panic surged through me, and I rushed back to the living room, slamming the door behind me. I shook the kids awake, desperate to leave, but they just stared at me, their eyes wide and unblinking. "What's happening?" I gasped, glancing back at the hallway. "Did you see that the older one, a girl with curly hair, shook her head slowly?" "We don't talk about her," she whispered, a tremor lacing her words. "She doesn't like it when you do." Realization hit me like a cold wave. I had stumbled into something dark, something that had haunted this house long before my time. The girl's eyes darted to the hallway, and I could feel a chill creeping into the room, wrapping around me like a vice. Suddenly, the lights flickered and the temperature dropped. I could feel it, a presence, encroaching on our little sanctuary. "We need to go," I insisted, but when I reached for the door, it wouldn't budge. The shadows thickened around us, inching closer as the whispering returned, now a cacophony of voices warning, pleading. Then, the lights went out completely, plunging us into darkness. Panic seized me as I fumbled for my phone, its light cutting through the obsidian void. I turned it on, heart racing, and shined it into the corner where the shadows coalesced. There she stood, the figure from the bathroom, her ghastly grin wider than ever. I yelled, the sound echoing in the suffocating silence, and in that moment, everything shattered. The kids let out terrified screams that pierced the blackness, and the last thing I remember was the cold grip of darkness enveloping me. When I finally woke, the sun streamed through the windows, and the children were gone. Their mother stood over me, panic etched on her face. "What happened?" she cried, and as I looked around, the house seemed normal, calm. But I knew what lay beneath the surface, the horror I had experienced, and the darkness that still lingered, waiting for the next unsuspecting babysitter to wander too close to its secrets. It was supposed to be a typical Saturday night. Just me, a bowl of popcorn, and a few episodes of my favorite series, when I got a call from my neighbor, Mrs. Holmes, asking if I could babysit her 6-year-old daughter, Mia. I hesitated. I had my reservations. There was something unsettling about the way she spoke. It was as if the words tumbled out in a rush, layered with an undercurrent of urgency. But I needed the extra cash, and besides, Mia was a sweet kid. As I arrived at their home, the atmosphere shifted. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, broken only by the soft hum of the refrigerator. Mrs. Thompson quickly ushered me in, her eyes darting around as if she were expecting someone or something. "Mia's upstairs," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Just keep her entertained and don't let her out of your sight with that." She left, the door clicking shut behind her, leaving me alone in the dimly lit house. I climbed the creaking stairs, my heart racing as I reached Mia's room. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, engrossed in a pile of dolls with glassy eyes that seemed to follow me as I entered. "Hi, Mia," I forced a cheerful tone, but she didn't look up. Instead, she whispered to her dolls, their names tumbling from her lips like a forgotten chant. As the night wore on, I tried to engage Mia in games and stories, but she remained distant, her gaze flickering from her dolls to the window, as if she sensed something lurking just beyond the darkness. I dismissed the unease creeping over me. Kids could be strange sometimes. Then, the power went out, the house plunged into darkness, and with it came a cold draft that sent shivers down my spine. I fumbled for my phone, using the dim light to navigate to the stairs. "Mia, stay with me," I called, but the room was eerily silent. Panic surged as I realized she wasn't there. "Mia," I whispered, my voice trembling. I ventured into the hallway, the faint glow of my phone illuminating the walls lined with family photos, each picture showing the same girl, Mia, but with an unsettling emptiness in her eyes that sent chills racing down my spine. Then I heard a soft giggle echoing from downstairs, a sound that didn't belong to Mia. I felt my heart pound in my chest as dread wrapped around me like a vice. Gathering my courage, I crept down the stairs, the floorboards creaking under my weight. "Hello," I called out, my voice barely a whisper. But the house answered with a silence that felt heavy with malice. As I reached the bottom step, I noticed the front door slightly ajar. The wind howled outside, swirling leaves in a frenzy. I peered outside, but only shadows greeted me. "Mia," I shouted, a sense of desperation clawing at my throat. Panic surged as I turned back, and that's when I saw her, Mia, standing at the end of the hallway, her back to me. She was holding a doll, its face cracked and twisted as if it had witnessed horrors unimaginable. "Mia, what are you doing?" I asked, inching closer. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as she turned slowly, her eyes dark and hollow, devoid of the innocence I had seen earlier. "They want to play," she murmured, a chilling smile spreading across her face. Before I could react, the dolls came to life, their glassy eyes glimmering with a sinister hunger. I stumbled backward, realizing too late that Mrs. Thompson's warning had not been about keeping Mia safe. She was protecting me from what her daughter had become. The dolls advanced, their tiny hands reaching out toward me, and within that moment of pure terror, I understood. I was not the babysitter anymore, I was the prey. The last thing I heard before the darkness swallowed me was Mia's laughter mingling with the soft, sinister whispers of the dolls inviting me to join their eternal game.